What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we are going to be doing our power rankings for the June Joust. We're going to talk about the hero pool that's been implemented for this one. But before we get into that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. All of you guys out there who've been supporting me all along the way, thank you very much. If you're new, thank you very much for stopping by. I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week, depending on what's going on, where we're at in the middle of the tournament, week to week, whatever's going on. But this is also an open forum, guys. So comment down below. This is why I do this. I initiate topics and give you my opinions, and then I want you guys to come in and let's start talking about Overwatch League. I love the league. I love professional Overwatch and the game itself. I want you guys to get involved. Let's talk about this. If you are new, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit the alert bell. That way you'll know when I got Overwatch League content coming up. And let's get to it. Okay, so before we get into the meat of the June Joust stuff, other than I hate the name, and everything doesn't have to be alliterative. It's like they got a Marvel comic villain creator name thing for these things. If you guys aren't comic book people, look it up. Marvel villains, a lot of alliteration. There are in fact a couple that have 3 in the Marvel universe. Kudos if you can figure out what they are. Well, you can figure out what they are, but you know where I'm going. Anyway, so my June Joust disdain aside, name-wise, let's talk about what happened. Okay, so this week, I didn't cover it in the last one because I thought the Pine thing was a little bit bigger, but Neptuno has stepped down from the Paris Eternal, retired from playing. It seems like he wants to coach, which I think would be a good move for the dude. Or, I don't know if he's going to go into another game or anything like that. I haven't seen anything like that, but he's being replaced by Dredro, who has been in contenders. People were looking at him even when the Paris roster started at first to come in. I know he's a good main support. I didn't think anything was wrong with Neptuno's play. It didn't look neither here nor there, bad, good. It looked like Neptuno was playing to me. I mean, but this kid is allegedly a really good main support, and maybe it's something that they needed to carry on. And he just was, maybe Neptuno was just, it was time for him. He just, he's had a lot of bullshit happen in the last year and a half, let's be honest. I mean, he was on Philly, he left Philly, signed with Guangzhou, he had visa issues, and, last year he didn't even play because then he got stuck in Spain after it was a whole mess. And so he signed with Paris, and apparently it's just not there, I guess, with him. He said mutually parting ways, so maybe they both decided it was time. But we have that. I'm not as... there are times when main supports make a difference. Like, if you look at Florida, last year, this year, their main support, there's a big difference. I know Dredro's good, and I know Neptuno's good. What I'm saying is it's impactful, and it's big, and every position is, though, to an extent. It's just, Neptuno didn't do anything egregious to lose them games, is what I'm getting at. And, maybe Paris said, it's time to move in a younger direction. I think he kind of was going to be a stopgap guy anyway. But, here we are. Okay, so we have that news, and then the Guangzhou Charge have released Arachne and Damon. And I'd like to say it's surprising, but it's not. They're underperforming. That roster is not god-awful. It's not the best in APAC. And, on the whole, just real quick, the whole APAC area, region, is kind of like in a flux, weird. A lot of teams are not performing well. And even the teams that are performing well in certain situations are not. I know a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people saying, well, that's the reason why Philadelphia's there. Philadelphia's there because they're a good team. I don't want to hear your bullshit. Okay? Before you start on that. I'm not railing on APAC, but there's a lot of teams in flux kind of when you get lower than Seoul, I guess. The Hangzhou, Guangzhou, New York, and the Valiant are just existing at this point as not even a worthy scrim partner from the way they've taken, 2 maps anyway. But So, and I understand this. There's a lot more urgency in these seasons right now with 16 games. I would like to see 20 games total. 16 is a little low. And also, I like an uneven, because they added another layer to the tiebreaker thing with map differential and something else, some other mathematical equation. You know what the easiest way to do it is? Put uneven numbers in. You don't have ties for a full match. So if you have uneven numbers, the records are going to, you're not going to have too many people with the same record. You're going to have, there's a greater chance to have a differential, and it expands upon the map differentials and all that kind of stuff. And I think 20 is a safe number. The first season was ridiculous and fun, but ridiculous for those guys playing. And they gradually whittled it down. I think maybe next year they need to go to 20. That's my opinion. It just would work out better in my opinion. I would like 20 matches. All right, so we'll see what happens with Guangzhou with a new coach. Arachne was a disciple of Krusty, and we'll see where that goes. I mean, he is the first one to quote-unquote fail, but I think it was also the urgency, well, like I started before I went on that tangent, of 16 games. You're 4 games in, you have looked abysmal in every one. The only team you've taken maps off is possibly the worst team outside of the Season 1 Shanghai Dragons that has been thrown out in the Overwatch League as far as a team. I understand it from Guangzhou's standpoint. What's going to happen next, I have no idea. Someone needs to get this team together. It's not bad. I mean, if you look at it, they have, from last year, they have Krong and Eileen, 2 All-Stars, and then Krong was a Rookie of the Year candidate, and you have Kariv, who's good. It's not like you don't have stars on this team and guys that can perform above their head. We'll see what happens when this next iteration comes up with the hero pools. If there's something safe that they can play, and maybe they look a little bit more like we kind of thought they did. I thought they were going to be mediocre at best. I didn't think they were going to be that great. I thought they'd be better in Hangzhou, but they're not right now. So, anyway. So we have that. Now let's move on to June Joust time. All right. Fuck your name. I don't like it. It's dumb. Moving on from that for the 3rd time in this episode, I think. We have the hero pool, and this rotation is something that I feared for a couple of teams. And we're gonna get into that when we get into the rankings, but the hero pool the out of rotation heroes are Tracer, Sombra, Reinhardt, and Zen. Zen doesn't make a big difference right now. He was situational and used in certain comps. You kind of used him a little bit in the rush comps. It's kind of big, but you can go Anna Bap or Lucio Anna. There's ways around the Zen thing. Reinhardt was massive as far as a tank in the rush comps and your slambulances and whatever kind of comps you want to use. Reinhardt was massive. And the first stage proved to be a main tank difference stage. Whoever had the best Reinhardt or Winston, that was the big key, was your main tank. Tracer and Sombra out. Big for dives and things like that, especially for a team like Dallas who did not have a hit scan. Tracer and Sombra out is really, really big. You can replace them with a couple other things. Maybe you run Doom Echo. I don't know if you're Dallas. Because Pine's not going to be in there right away. Everyone thinks Pine's just going to swoop in, come in here, and he's going to fucking just jump into 2018 and start clicking heads again. He's not going to be in until late May. That's 2 to 3 weeks down the line from now. We're talking somewhere around the tournament. And then he has to get integrated with the team and all that kind of jazz. So Dallas could be in trouble, but I don't think they are, because people thought they were in trouble on the first stage, and they weren't. So this could play more into their liking, I guess, but I'm not like I said, I'm not a fan of the hero pool thing right now. I like the open meta. There was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of heroes being played, a lot of people trying different stuff, but we're here, and this is what we have, and I I love watching high-level Tracer play, and I like people just mashing on Reinhardt. So I'm never gonna knock them being in a meta. So that being said, I think we're gonna see, for some reason, and people at Blizzard can hate me. I don't care. I don't know why when they do these hero pool things, especially in Overwatch. I know they do percentages and all that shit, but it always seems like they want to buff and bring back in the fucking double shield thing. I don't want to see Orisa Sigma with people throwing dynamite and shooting at shields and waiting for fucking halt cooldowns. That was the most boring thing ever. What we had in the first stage this year made me feel like it was 2018 again with the speed of play, but it was with more precision team-wise and things like that. I don't like double shield. I don't like waiting for ultimates, the fucking cow perching down, putting the shield down, fucking Baptiste and Ashe somewhere in the rafters, and Sigma throwing rocks at people. That's not fun to me. But we're going to see some of that. I don't think with Winston being in there, I do have full faith we're going to have some dive stuff going on, especially Winston and D.Va, so that's still okay. And we'll see what happens as far as hit scan goes, or if they, do a Doomfist dive thing. There's all kinds of things you can do. I mean, you could see like some of that Ball Doom Pharah stuff that they did in Asia a couple years ago. Who knows? But now that I said my piece on double shield for the 500th time, let's talk rankings. Now, here's how I went about rankings. Now, I did these after the May Melee tournament, and I did not take into account fully the hero pool thing. This is coming out of the May Melee tournament, going into the June Joust. And I also segmented it again like I did before. I have tiers in each of the regions. Hate me for that, but look, it's the way I see it. I see the chunks of teams in certain areas, especially after we've had a reasonable amount of play from the good teams, and we've seen how bad some of the bad teams are. So let's dive into this. Okay, here's my overall ranking up on the screen, and then we'll go over the regions after I give my reasoning on this right here. Okay, so coming out of the May Melee, I have the top chunk of teams. I have a bunch of them because we had some good performances by teams, some that hit a roadblock here or there, but are still, I think, very, very good teams. We have, starting with Dallas at the 1 position. They proved the point that they can play without a hit scan player, and when they get everything together with the best main tank in the league, and then you have one of the best, if not right now as we speak, one of the best flex supports in Fielder playing, who can still play Ana in this, whose Zen was okay, but his Ana is on point and probably top 4 in the league. Debatable, but you have those guys, and you have creativity from the coaching staff where they get these guys on comfort picks into certain compositions, playing against teams, throws them off, all that kind of stuff. They're number 1 right now. I have the Dragons at 2. They barely lost to Dallas in that first round, or the second round match, and they kept it close at times, but Dallas was better overall than them. There are some things that I want to see from them. Fate had a rough tournament. I went back and watched some of the stuff that I didn't get to watch. I watched it a little more closely. Fate wasn't as good as I kind of thought he was at first in that. I think they're still a good team. I think they have a lot going on here. I want to see some better play from Fate. His ball is not very good right now. It's definitely, especially in APAC, it's not one of the best. No stretch of the imagination there. He's kind of okay on it, and he misses a lot of things on ball. Let's put it that way. And it could be important in this meta. His Orisa last year, I watched him a lot on the Mayhem. His Orisa is decent enough, so if they get into comps where they're running a lot of Orisa, I think they'll be okay. I still have them at 2 because they did beat Philly, who I have at 3. Philly yacked that match away against the Dragons, and let's be honest, that they had their opportunities, and so did Florida against the Dragons too, but I still have Shanghai out there because they managed to win those matches when it counted, and that makes a difference. But Philly, I still think they're the number 2, could be number 1. I think they're very close, them and Shanghai. I think they could outclass them in this meta, potentially, that's coming up, but we really don't know what's going on until we get to see some matches, so I have them at 3. They're very, very close to being a top 2 team, in my opinion. They could have been in the Melee. They're not. I do think that they're going to be in the June Joust. That's one of my, not a hot take, but a prediction I have. I've been on Philly all year. I know their components are fantastic. You can't, like I've said a million times, you can't tell me that a team with Mono and Alarm and Carpe and Rascal are going to lose that many games. And if you look at their schedule is absolute stupidity for June. So, and this is without these guys that everyone is like waiting for them to come in and integrate them in. This is the perfect time because they could potentially be 8-0. Because right now, if you look at their schedule for June, and we're going to talk about some team schedules and things like that, but their schedule for June, they have New York, Chengdu, Guangzhou, and the Valiant. All winnable. Chengdu is the only one that I think that will give them fits. But other than that, you're looking at, if you're a Philly fan, you're looking at going into the June Joust, whether you make it in or not, you could be potentially 7-1, 8-0 halfway through the season. And your guys are looking to show up late May, like somewhere around the end of the tournament or the beginning of the tournament time from what I've seen. So you get them in, practicing, all that kind of stuff. And then because you guys got to think there's a whole travel thing, and then going to Korea, you got to do a 2-week quarantine still, which is fine. It's their rules, and I understand that. I mean, especially these guys coming in from Europe, so you're talking probably maybe the last 2 weeks of the tournament prelims and all that crap. So by the time they get in, you get them situated in, and then what you can do in the next stage, which you will be able to, starts off after the June Joust. You're playing Guangzhou, Shanghai, Chengdu, and New York in that section with no hero pools. So you have one tough game in your next, 2 tough games, maybe you can consider it. 2 tough games in your next 9, 10, or what would it be? No, hi math major. 8. In your next 8 matches, you have to play Shanghai and Chengdu twice. So you have 3 tough matches out of that many. So they're still looking good, and you can integrate the guys in, and it'll be fine. So I have them at 3. Florida I have at 4 just because they got into the tournament, they finished well, they did a good job, and it's kind of, this is kind of a cluster pick here. Florida, Houston, and Washington, I feel like are on the same level. Florida did good in the tournament, or to get into the tournament. They floundered a little bit in the tournament, let's be honest. The second Shanghai match was bad. They had bad moments where they could have taken the match against Shanghai the first time, and they did not. They look decent enough against Chengdu. There are things they need to work on, and as the season goes on, I think they're going to get better. Houston, I have them in there. They ran into Dallas, who was insane. They have overperformed this year from even my level, where I had them somewhere in the middle. I had them kind of like at 10, 12. Overall, this isn't in the region. I think I had them like 7th, 6th, 7th, somewhere in there. I had them above the garbage in NA a couple of spots. I had faith in them, and they've proven me right. But I think that they are a top 5 team in this league right now. Granted, we haven't seen them play this, what's going to happen with the hero pools and all that stuff, but from the results that they've gotten and the coaches that they have, I think they'll be fine. Dallas just threw them for a loop the second time. They gave them a battle the first time, and, they did beat San Francisco, and I have them at a solid 5. Washington, also, I'm like I said, 4, 5, 6. You can call it all whatever you want. All 3 of those teams are kind of in the same area. I wanted to tier break it, but I think all these teams are the teams that I see that are, every time we get to a tournament, you're going to see the names of these teams up there in the tournament rankings. That's kind of how I feel right now. Washington, they look really good. They did not look good on Reinhardt comps. Florida exploited that. Bebe has exceeded my expectations by leaps and bounds. I moved them up, I think, 4 to 6 spots in the rankings. They look good. They've proven something. Once they get some cohesion and they start playing a little bit more, that tank line of Mag and Fury are just going to eat people up. And, 6th is not terrible. Now, you guys are looking at my rankings, and you know how I am with teams like this team, the Shock. They have improved nothing to me in this stage, in the first stage, other than that they're beatable. I think on any given day, the teams that I have above them can beat them. I don't care what anyone says right now. They are not playing like the San Francisco Shock play. They got absolutely smoked by Dallas. They weren't mentally in the match. They were doing the cocky shit. We'll just yeet in there, beat Dallas, and Houston's on our radar. You're not that team right now. You need to get things together. The fucking around with Violet on HitScan needs to stop. Put him in there. Yes, I know you want him on the field all the time, and Anna's big and all that, and he's not good on this or that. You know what? Put him in on BAP. Fuck it. Just put him in. You need that guy in there. Also, FD God, they're not used to playing around him. Super is okay until you hack him, and then he goes mental. He's not making the big plays that he normally does. Now, who knows in this? I hear a lot of talk about Hog. We might see the Super Hog again, and that could be just what the doctor ordered for this team. I want to see more Smurf in there too. I know it was a Reinhardt meta, but you cannot tell me that Smurf can't play Reinhardt a little bit, enough on some of these maps. There are just a lot of questions I have. I think Striker needs to be in there on McCree or Tracer. I know you want diversity in that, and sometimes you want to run Striker and somebody else, like you want Striker and the Tracer, but now you have Striker. You don't have Ons, so I don't want to see any of this Violet on Ashe bullshit, potentially. Just put Striker on things that he can go shooty. He's got fucking cracked aim. The guy is insane. Play him on that. Nero is playing well. His May is 90% good, 10% questionable. I like him on other things. He plays Pharah really well. His Echo's decent enough. From here out, I would like to see this the DPS line just be Striker and Nero. That's I think your bread and butter here. They just have underperformed and just all kinds of not them. We'll see what happens. Next, I have Chengdu. Chengdu has played really, really well. They've been exploited a little bit in the tournament. I think a lot of it's inexperience at this level. You have guys like Gaga, who was really good, fresh into the league, and you have a couple other rookies, Faraway 1987, you have Monk, you have guys, and even the guys that are on their team haven't really participated. Yeah, they participated in the tournaments and stuff last year. I don't count those as much, though, because every team was in. Yeah, it's a tournament, but it's kind of like another week if you're a team that was mediocre to bad like they were, where you're just going to get pounded. This is our first real situation of having a championship type thing in their face, in their grasp, I should say. And they did okay. They could have done better, but I'm expecting some more stuff out of this team, and I have them in the top chunk. 8, I think that's a good spot for them, right above 50-50. All right, the next chunk is the anybody can... You can call this whatever you want to call this. This is the Gatekeeper Central. The Gladiators I have in there. They looked They were disappointing to me. I'm not going to lie. They did not look like the championship caliber team that I thought they were going to be. With bringing in Moth, you had Birdring, you bring in Muse, you have all of these guys now, and it just doesn't. And Shu, and you want to say this team should be here. Are you looking at the coaching? Are you looking at how they're developing players? There is something amiss with this organization at times. They went 2-2. Disappointing. Yes, all right. The second 2 matches they had, they kicked the ass in those 2. But they weren't playing anybody noteworthy necessarily, and they missed the tournament. They should not have been in that position. There's no way. I mean, yeah, in retrospect, we look at Dallas now and we're going, okay, Dallas is the best team. At least I am. I thought Dallas was going to be good. But there was no way, without a hit scan player, that I thought in week 1, trying to figure this thing out, that the Gladiators would lose to the Dallas Fuel. It just was not fathomable to me. And they couldn't beat the Shock, who are mediocre by their standards right now. They need to get things together. This is, it's not the old... I think some of these coaches and some of these teams are having some issues with the old scheduling style, where we had a ton of games, and you could, hey, let's try this guy with these guys, and let's like manipulate the lineup a little bit. And you don't have that time anymore. So doing what they did in the first 4 games of the May Melee stage 1, whatever you want to call it, is put them in a hole right now. You're 2-2. You're middling in this league. With a roster like that, there's no way that Houston, Chengdu, Washington, and Philly you could even go with should be ahead of them. You could throw in Dallas too. This roster should be. This is one of the teams that I said at the beginning of the year. This team should be competing for championships, not wallowing around in the middle of the pack with this roster. Unless I'm overrating this roster with Moth, Shu, Birdring, Space, and Muse. And whoever the other DPS you're going to throw in there is. Mirror or whoever. There's something amiss here. But that's my take on the Gladiators. I had them at 9. Next up, I have the Seoul Dynasty. They were Seoul. Let's just put it that way. They were not bad. They were decent. They had chances to win matches that they let some slip away. They're Seoul. You don't know what you're going to get from day to day. I think that potentially in this meta, you never know. You could see the Marvel Gesture lineup again. Gesture playing some Hog, whatever. They're doing Soul things. Their support line is very mediocre to me right now. I think this is one of the biggest issues they have. I thought Creative and Onimo would be decent enough to sustain and keep this team, keeping them in games and stuff like that. But they're just kind of meh. They're not, and you can't be in this league right now and have a meh flex support. Onimo, he hasn't impressed me, but he hasn't done anything to necessarily lose games. He's Onimo. He's kind of like a flat line middle. He's a game managing quarterback kind of guy. Not going to lose you games, not going to win you games. He's going to keep you competitive, and it is what it is. But along with him, see, he played for years with Jonak. So Jonak was the one doing the yeoman's work, so to speak, just fucking raking on the flex support. But you have Creative now, who's playing okay to above average at times, but you need a little bit more out of this. Their DPS line is fine. Prophet has moments where he profits things and goes ham. He also has moments where he does the Prophet falling asleep thing. Fitz, I think, is doing a decent job. there are occasions when Fitz is a little off, but it's very rare. There are times when Gesture just thinks it's 2018 when he's playing Winston, where he's just going in and Prophet's behind him and he thinks it's just, everybody's paying attention. I don't know. He initiates too soon sometimes, and it doesn't seem like they have cohesion. And this team has been together, minus Onimo. All these guys have played with each other. So I don't know. But I have them in the middle. Their schedule isn't crazy. Well, it's hard to say. They have a couple of tough games in here. This could be one of those stages where Seoul just bottoms out or exceeds expectations. They play Shanghai, New York, Guangzhou. So yeah, they play New York, Shanghai, Chengdu, Guangzhou. Another middling stage potentially, but you never know with them. They could lose to New York or something like that, or beat Chengdu. So yeah, in the middle. But yeah, that's where I have them. Next up in that list, I have Toronto, who made it into the tournament. Surprisingly, I think that they turned a little bit of a corner, but they're not quite there yet. They don't have quite the oomph to get up into that upper chunk of teams. I think they can give some teams some fits. They're gonna win some games that they shouldn't. They're gonna lose some games that they should win as well. Coming up, I think that they're building a good solid ground right here. They're a definite gatekeeper to the shit teams. This is kind of like a gatekeeper range I have right here right now. The same can go for Atlanta. Like Toronto, Atlanta, and Seoul, I feel as though are like the same team with different colors and different players. They have guys that can go off and do different things. Now, this is a thing where Atlanta could rise up. Yeah, they took San Francisco to 5, but San Francisco's not San Francisco. They lost in 5 to Toronto. They got hammered by Florida. And, yeah, they just... There's things missing with Atlanta. Toronto, like I said, these guys are like all kind of in this chunk of an area where, depending on metas and scheduling and things like that, I don't think that... I mean, both these teams are looking at 2-2. You have Atlanta has Houston, the Glads, Vancouver, and London, not necessarily in that order. And then Toronto's got Paris, Boston, San Francisco, and Houston. Now, there's potential for Toronto to fall, because I think Paris and Boston are just a little bit below them, but they could rise up and beat them. San Francisco, I think, and Houston, that's going to be the telltale week that they have. But I feel as though these teams are in the middle. They're just kind of can't beat the good teams, will beat the bad teams, and occasionally surprise one way or the other. Now, let's move on to the next chunk. This is the not quite shit chunk of teams. Teams that are kind of like on the rebound. I have Hangzhou next. Now, they're coming back. They look better. They look decent against the Dragons. I feel as though this roster is starting to gel a little bit. I like some of the things they've been doing. I worry about some of the things. Their support line. Everything is decent enough, but it's just hasn't come together yet. It started to towards the end, and I think that they're going to be able to do some things here. I think they're going to skyrocket the standings and just be this like surprise? Not really, but I think they're going to be better. Their gameplay looked better as the first stage went on. Playing shy seemed to be the right move to me. And they have an okay schedule. They play the Valiant twice, actually. No, wait. I'm looking at this wrong. Sorry. Once again, the schedule's whacked on the site. I hate the way they have it set up. They're playing Guangzhou, Shanghai, Valiant, and Chengdu. 2-2 is reasonable for them. They could rise up and beat somebody. They could beat a Chengdu. You don't know with the meta and stuff like that. But I like what they're doing. I want to see them play some Coldest. I want to see some of that. I want to see more Shy. I think they're moving in the right direction. Things are starting to look better. for this team. I am higher on them than I was at the beginning of the season after watching them play a little bit and watching them progress. It's definitely better than it was. Are they great? No. Are they decent enough? I mean, they're in a smaller region. There are chances for them to move up. Next up, I have Boston. Boston looked decent in 2 matches and terrible in a couple other ones. They're kind of in that same spot as Hangzhou. They look a little bit better as it was going on. I have questions at certain things, but I think the more this team plays, the better they're going to be. Are they going to get above 14th or 15th? Probably not. I don't see them ever competing for... Well, maybe you get a meta that's right for this team. You might see them in a tournament. I'm not expecting anything. Same thing with Hangzhou. Next up, we have Paris. Same feelings on them. I'm not spending a lot of time diving into these bottom teams. We've seen them play. They look like crap. Except for this chunk, these guys are a little bit better than the garbage. But Paris, I don't know if Drijo is going to make a difference neither here or there. I like the way they've been playing. They look decent. They look decent enough. They've been competitive in matches, even ones where you initially are like, oh, they got 3-0, but they hang around. They're doing decent enough. And I think this is also what they said. They're building for the future, and they look better. I like where they're going. Much like Hangzhou and Boston, they're better than I thought they were going to be. Paris, that is. And maybe Drijo gives them a little bit of a spark, a lift, whatever you want to call it. And they make some moves. Now, by any stretch, see the conversation we just had with the other 2 teams. I'm not saying they might sneak into a tournament here. I'm not counting on it. They have a solid support line, which is one of the things that you go with. Their tanks are okay. I think Dan, and Elevote are decent enough. Not great, but good enough. You got Onigat and Naga and Suna. They're not playing terrible. They're doing all right. But I think right now your support line is your best look on here with Khan and Drijo. Or even Neptuno at that point. They were still the best facet of this team. So let's move on to the next chunk where we have the dumpster. And then we have a graveyard underneath the dumpster for the other 2 teams. Next up, I got New York. They look terrible. I'm not going to lie. The only person on that team that looked decent outside of Jonak was Flora, and that was when he was playing McCree, and that was about it. Their tanks look terrible. Yakpung looks like he did when he was on Toronto. Ivy is non-existent. He's not showing me anything. Bianca is not doing anything for it. This whole team is not doing anything for it. Friday, any of them. Other than Flora occasionally doing some stuff on McCree, they have looked terrible. I think the only maps they won were against potentially the Valiant, from what I saw. I had them slightly above Vancouver for some reason. I don't know why. Shoot me on that. But these 3 teams are somewhere in the middle. You're never going to see them in a tournament, in my opinion. They're just kind of... They could occasionally win a game that they shouldn't, which is any game other than playing Guangzhou or the Valiant right now, or each other. But, okay, so the next up I have Vancouver. They look better. I thought they were the worst team in the league. They've looked better than I thought they were. They've come around. They're not playing terrible. They're winning maps off of good teams. They're not just, getting map wins from the other shit like them. They beat London. It's just, they're bad, and they're improving a little bit, but they're not going to go any higher with this roster right now. This is also a future thing, or they're just, I don't know what to call this team. They're not good. Next up, I have London. Very disappointing to me. I believe I had them up somewhere in the Hangzhou, Boston area. I thought they were going to be decent. I thought this team, that when they played in EU contenders, most of the guys that were on there were good. I'm not liking where this team's at. They have also said, don't expect a ton. We're playing for the future and all that. They have looked abysmal at times. Like, just absolute terrible play. And some of the guys on the team, You know, I defend. For some reason I'm an apologist for Kellex. He's okay, if not bad at times. It's just there's a lot of things. And getting into. I don't want to get into all of the, their alt economies and rotations and hero picks and swaps and staying on. They're just not good. And I don't know if it's a reflection of the coaching, but I thought they would be better than this. Maybe they improve a little bit in this next iteration with the hero pools, but I'm not looking for anything much out of them. And then let's go. The last two teams, we have Guangzhou and the Valiant. Guangzhou, highly disappointing. We talked about them for a minute. They're garbage right now. They're just not playing good. They look lost. Is really the whole thing. I don't know if Arachne was too much for them as a group. They didn't mesh. Something was off. They never had any cohesion going into any fights. The Valiant don't count. I think what Mr. X said at one point last week, and he said to the guys on the panel, the three of us, Krong and Eileen, could go in and beat the Valiant. The only reason why they're above the Valiant is they beat the Valiant. The only maps they took were off them, and they have a lot of work to do, and it's just not. It's not pretty. Hopefully, with a new coaching staff and all that, they can get some things righted, and maybe they move up a little bit, but I don't think there's much hope for this team, even with the guys that they have on there, with Krong, Eileen, Kariv. There's players on this team. I keep saying it, but they're not performing. Bottom line. And speaking of the bottom line, I actually didn't put another tier in between Guangzhou and the Valiant, because they both played shit. And I have nothing else to say about the Valiant. They don't know what they're doing. I think they took one map or two, maybe the whole stage. They're as bad as we thought they were. They're just playing out the string. They're less than a scrim team, and teams are getting free wins, which is bullshit. Like I always say with that stuff, I don't like that. But here we are, Valiant worst team. Okay, that's the 20. Okay, right now I'm going to throw up. We'll talk about it real quick. We're running low on time. I'm yapping a lot. But West, East. Okay, here we go. It's not too much of a surprise as to how I have this. West, I got Dallas, Florida, Houston, Washington, then San Francisco, the Gladiators, Toronto, Atlanta, Paris, Boston, and then I do have a separation with Vancouver and London just being pretty much out of the mix of anything. I don't know why I didn't tier it anywhere else. Now in the East, pretty standard. Everyone pretty much has something that looks similar to this. Shanghai, Philly, Chengdu, Seoul, Hangzhou, NYXL, Guangzhou, and the Valiant. Pretty straightforward. I mean, if you're paying attention a little bit. I mean, I was rambling some here and there, but if you're paying attention a little bit, you knew where I was going with this. Okay, so that, guys, is going to do it for the power rankings for the June Joust. And as I said earlier in the show, these are what I think going in. Little bit of hero pool in there in the back of my head, but these are the teams that performed consistently and look to me good enough where the way I rank them, where hero pools are going to matter a little bit, but not a ton. I think that top 8 teams you're going to see all year long here and there and in tournaments. You might see one of them fall in or out depending on the meta, but this is where my head's at as far as that goes. So that is going to do it, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. Once again, thank you guys for all of your support. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. Everybody that's been checking me out, subscribed, and all that kind of stuff, and commenting down below, greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. And if you're new, you made it this far, thanks for sticking around. Please hit a like, hit a subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. I'll have some more stuff up later on in the week. We're going to have a preview of week, what are we at, 5 now? Going into the June Joust, we're going to talk about the matchups and all that kind of stuff. And dive right in, get ready for the matches on Friday. I'll have something up midweek. And then, of course, we'll do a recap and all that kind of stuff. You guys know the drill. So, thank you very much. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you in the next one.